strategically, I had a record label with a young lady by the name of Layla Steinberg that was really tapped into the hip hop scene. And Layla discovered Tupac. And when that happened, that changed everything. I had DJs. I paid them almost nothing. They came for the promoters. Today, DJ packages for festivals are, 6, 7, 8, 10 millions of dollars.
You're in music, Hollywood, production, reality TV, MTV. Now you're starting a virtual assistant staffing company.
Entrepreneurs are always trying to fill a need. People don't buy needs, they buy wants. No jobs or businesses are safe from AI. Customer service will evaporate. VAs are going to be around, but you'll have one person to do the task of 10. For the company, it took me 6 years to build. In 45 minutes, we hammered out the deal on a Winchell's napkin. So why did I do the deal? Well,
Daven Michaels, it is awesome to see you here. I kind of wish I was there looking at your background in Puerto Rico, but I'll settle for Zoom for the time being.
Yeah, not fake. Yes, exactly, Puerto Rico.
It does actually look kind of fake, and I'll give a shout out to Riverside because we're not on Zoom, but remote nonetheless.
Do you like Riverside, by the way?
Of the options, I love it. Okay. And one of the things that I really respect about businesses that are established is when they're consistently improving their product. And so, like, we were on Salesforce forever and we moved to HubSpot. HubSpot, constant iteration, constantly rolling out new things. And they just
have
work.
to keep up with Go High Level, right?
Maybe. But totally different scale with HubSpot, but certainly relative to Salesforce, it's like, you got to be kidding. They're just night and day. So Riverside is kind of like that, where they've integrated all these AI tools and editing tools in the back end to do things. Off me and Riverside, Daven Michaels, we met a very long time ago. And when I was thinking about talking, I just wanted to catch up with you.
You and I have been in the marketing space about, I'm going to say 15 years for me. I think it's the same for you, roughly. And I have my core group of my very, very first peeps in the space. And you're one of my oldest amigos in the space. You're probably in the group of 5.
Yeah, we met when you were just getting 123 Employee going. And it took me many years to learn about your history before that. And so I want to get to 123 Employee, but what I found out years later is that you had multiple crazy hit records that you had produced. And also, like, I'm talking names that everybody knew in that era and still does.
Yeah, in my office, I don't know if you can see the gold and platinums on the wall there.
Oh yeah. So yeah, let's talk at the beginning. But before that, even you were a massive EDM producer, electronic music events producer, coordinator. I don't know what you called yourself, but give me some background on kind of how you dove into that, because I want to get into business, but like throwing large scale events is sort of business, and it's sort of a kid that's wants to throw parties.
I found for me, the probably 2 biggest tools in my quiver, if you will, or my arsenal for business that I've drawn back on so many times, time and time again, is doing events, managing large groups of people. So this must run on top of Zoom. Does it run on top of Zoom?
I don't think so, but this whole fucking AI generating thumbs and shit, I don't like it.
Oh yeah. So doing events and MLM, and I had a little bit of background in MLM. MLM is just, it shows you, how to manage and inspire people and lead. But my story, was really the school of hard knocks. I had very little education. I started my first business. Well, I graduated high school at 16, started my first business at 15. Did not graduate high school because I was particularly intelligent. It was because I was driven and I hated high school, and I doubled up on my work. Got out early, did a little bit of college. My business took off and I dropped out of college, and that was that. But my very first business, I was designing clothing for music groups in the early 80s. And my bands had nothing going on. They were all playing their garage. And an incredible thing happened. MTV came on the air, changed the face of music, changed my life. So I was working with these bands that had nothing going on. Within months, most had record deals. Within a year, they were selling millions of albums, and I rode that wave, and it was a wild ride. And just to put that in perspective, I would go on tour with these bands, and my biggest band had 800 people in concert. Within a year, we went 800, 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, 25,000, 50,000 stadiums in a year. We had a band called Zot. That was our first band. Have you ever heard of Zot?
No.
No, because that didn't happen. So we really formed this company because we had a band with a record deal. We're like, oh my gosh, they have a record deal. They need clothes. Like, we're friends with them. Let's go, and so many entrepreneurs are always chasing opportunity, right? This was an opportunity. We had no opportunities. We were just dumb kids. And it's like, Zot had a record deal. Let's go. Zot tanked. Nothing ever happened to Zot. That was Alex. Nothing happened, even though they had a record deal. But then MTV hit, and then all of our bands started to have record deals, which was insane. And so that's how it happened. So we were designing their costumes, designing the clothes.
So how did you connect with the other bands? So you mentioned they were like MTV was the catalyst. How did you know them in the first place?
Okay. So the first band was the Thompson Twins. So they had a big band. They were in the UK. They put out 3 albums. They didn't have a lot of success. So they all split. And then 3 of the members, Joe, Tom, and Alana, they decided to start a new version of the Thompson Twins, 3 of them. And they had a little hit in the UK called Lies. And then Hold Me Now came out, which became an anthem. Of course, Hold Me Now. It was such a monster hit. That was like the catalyst. So then people started to hear things. When I opened my showroom on Melrose, the night before we opened, we had a huge fashion show, like huge fanfare. We had press, paparazzi, celebrities. Next day we opened for business. We had no customers. Day 2, no customers. Day 3, crickets. Day 4, customers, but no sales. And right around day 4, my life began to flash before my eyes because I took everything I could beg, borrow, or steal and invested in opening this store. I mean, it was brick and mortar. There was no internet back then. And if I failed, it was going to take me a decade to pay back that debt, which was over half my life at the time. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty frightening. So at that point, I made the executive decision to start staying open late, not like 6, 7, 8, but 11, 12 midnight, because there was a restaurant/bar next door to me. And I was just praying someone would get some drinks in them and come in and buy something from me. So right around day 5, it's like 11 o'clock at night, somebody comes in and buys something from me. So thank the gods, right? So that was step 1. Day 2, I went to run some errands. My manager and I kept a couple of people in the showroom, and I went to run some errands. And I'm driving down the street, and I see Jack Nicholson in a limo. You see celebs all the time on Melrose. So then I go do my thing, and then I get back to the office, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!" And Jack Nicholson had been there, and he was going to the Purple Rain tour. He was sitting in the Purple Circle, and he bought clothes for all his friends, bought out like half the store, and that was kind of Jack was like the catalyst. That was the beginning. And then, word of mouth and foot traffic on Melrose, and we grew a business. Yeah.
And did that just naturally through kind of being in the right place connect you to the other bands?
Yeah. Right place, right time, right location, networking, connections. It was a small little incestuous group back then. It was just getting going. It was crazy. There were things that I loved and didn't like about the business. Like, I was in retail clothing before that. And I thought that was going to be my life until my Uncle Mo, who was the smartest man I ever knew, told me I needed to start a business. And I just did whatever he said without question because he was so brilliant. And he changed the trajectory of my life. So now I had a business, but I was still waiting on people. I was waiting on celebrities. Most were quite nice, but I didn't want to wait on people. I want to have my own business. I want people to wait on me. I was like, clipping their clothes, pinning up their clothes and this and that. I didn't want to do that. So, but I enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed the perks. I enjoyed traveling with them and going backstage and meeting celebs and having a lot of fun. And that was cool. But I wanted something else. So we sold that business and started a telecommunications company. Humble beginnings, very humble beginnings. Didn't have that much really. But 5 years later, we're in 60 cities across the U.S. I sold to a public company. I was in the pager business, pagers, right? And if you and I are old enough to know pagers. If you're young and
I had a pager.
Yeah, I had a pager too. But everybody had a pager. Pagers were the cell phones of the day. They predated cell phones, and everybody had a pager. That's how you communicate with people. And
what was your code?
Like to let people know it was me, or
yeah.
I don't
So for the people that never use pagers, if you get a text from somebody, it comes from a number that you know. When you get a page, you would page somebody and then you would leave your codes. They would know it was you, and you would page them the number that they could call back.
Right.
And you'd go to a cell phone and call them back. But the code was your
And we did that
identifier.
because cell phones were so expensive. It was 50 cents a minute. You're doing that to save some money. So this was all pre-cell phone. Cell phones were coming out in a couple of years. I knew that I had to sell the company. Now, the consensus within my industry was that cell phones would come out and more pagers would get sold. And initially, that's exactly what happened. But then I knew that eventually the bottom would fall out from the pricing model in cell phones, and then pagers would evaporate. So I had 2 years. First thing I did, we were courted by a public company. I remember they flew me out to Santa Barbara. We had a great meeting. They made me a cash offer. That was nice, but it wasn't enough money to make me leave the business, even though the clock was ticking. So I hired the number one business broker in my space. His name was Hiram. And I said, listen, find us a suitor. And so he was working on it. There had been so much consolidation in the industry. So public companies were just buying up companies. There weren't many companies left. They'd all consolidated. There were two potentially good targets to be buyers of mine. They were both public companies, but small on the public scale, of course, big on a private level, but they're public. First guy was a crook. I just couldn't do business with him. I knew that. The other guy was a guy by the name of Hell. Everybody loved Hell. We all wanted to be like Hell when we grew up. Hell was like older, 60s, 70s. And I knew he was the perfect guy to buy my company. And Hiram worked on him for a year. Nothing, really. He really didn't have an interest. And one day out of the blue, he calls me. Hell calls me. He says, Daven, he says, do you want to do this deal or what? And I'm like, yeah, I want to do the deal. He said, great. Meet me at the Winchell's Donuts around the corner from my office tomorrow. I'm like, okay. He loved donuts. So met him at Winchell's, and I told him what my number was. And he said, nah, you're not going to get that. I said, no, I think you will give that to me. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll make it easy for you. Give me some money. I'll take a note. Give me stock in your company. And he was like, well, that I could do, because it was primarily a paper deal for him, right? And so in 45 minutes, we hammered out the deal for the company. It took me 6 years to build, on a Winchell's napkin. And the deal was done. So why did I do the deal? Well, there had been so much consolidation. Hell and this other guy, Robert, were the only two players on the block that hadn't gotten swallowed up yet. And I felt like if all of a sudden he wanted to do the deal and he didn't want to do it for a year, I figured something was up. I figured he was going to get bought out. And it was a worthwhile gamble. I got some cash on the front end. I had the note. I had stock. The stock was the risk. And as a parting gift, Hell owned 42 classic cars. So he also gave me a couple of classic cars. He gave me a 1958 pink Cadillac and a 1965 Mustang with pony interior.
I love it.
And then I went off on my honeymoon with my ex-wife, and the lawyers did their thing, and the deal was done. And I remember I went to pick up the first check from Hell, and I was so excited because Hell's going to be my new BFF. We're in bed together. We're partners. We can hang out, but that wasn't meant to be. So Hell had just gotten married to, I think, like his sixth wife. She was gorgeous. And he was ecstatic because she had even more money than Hell had, and Hell had a lot of money. So I remember I walked them out to the parking lot. Hell gets into his 1959 bright red Cadillac Eldorado convertible, top down. And he literally, they didn't have bucket seats. They had these like bench seats. I remember his girl gets in and nudges up to him, and he puts his arm around her, and he drives off into the sunset. And I just remember thinking to myself, that guy is the coolest guy ever. A year goes by, half his company gets bought out. My stock triples, and that moment in time changed my life. But what really changed my life was Hell's wife had a little stomach pain. 3 months later, she was dead from pancreatic cancer. And it was the summertime, Newport Beach, and Hell and I started hanging out. He'd call me in the morning. What are you doing? Nothing. We'd go to the gym, and then we'd have breakfast, maybe lunch, and then hang out at the pool. And then we'd go to the yacht club at night and pick up chicks. And we were the oddest couple. I'm in my 20s and he's like 70s. But nobody cared. Everybody loved Hell, young and old, because he had these amazing stories. He was so colorful. And that was one life lesson right there, is that, in our society, not necessarily in Asian culture, but in our society, when you get old, you get invisible, right? Nobody wants to hang out with you anymore. Unless you're super rich. Then everybody wants to hang out with you, right? Because you're interesting, right? And you're probably, relevant, right? You're probably doing stuff. And so everybody loved Hell. They probably loved him more than they loved me. So that was great. But also Hell at a young age showed me what he was doing. He showed me he did reverses. So he showed me how to take a company, reverse it into a public shell, take it public. And that was back when it was not as heavily regulated as it is today. And so that was invaluable to me.
Well, a couple things jumped out there for me. One, from the beginning, time and place of the costume wardrobe, tire store, that's still relevant today, and not necessarily in the same way, but you need to be where people are. And that makes a world of difference.
For sure. Like being at events or what have you. Like, I totally agree with you. I think there's a couple of things here. One is proximity is power, right? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right. So for sure. Also, if you ask an entrepreneur about their luck, most of them will take credit for it, right? They'll say, well, luck is when preparedness meets opportunity, right? I knew what I was doing or what have you. And that is true. Absolutely. But also I will say, if you've had some success in your life, you've definitely been blessed with some good luck. I was certainly in the right place at the right time. Did I have something to do with it? Yes. But did I know what I was doing? No. And did I have some luck? Absolutely. And I'm very grateful for that luck. Part two of that is mentorship, right? Hal was one of my earliest mentors. And I've had so many astounding mentors over the time. No matter what you want to do or aspire to do or are doing, there's always somebody that has walked that path before you and probably done a better job, right? And if you can grab them and kind of grab their coattails, if you will, they'll drag you along the finish line much quicker.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I want to dig into a little bit is the structure of the deal. So you mentioned you had a number and Hal laughed at you, and you said, no, I think you will do this. And one of the good rules of negotiation, specifically when you're looking at the sale of a company or real estate or really a lot of things, is if one party picks the number, the other picks the terms.
Exactly. So in a deal, it's either price or terms, right? So if you can't get your price, you get your terms. If you can't get your terms, you get your price if you're a good negotiator.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the details. So you mentioned you got some lump of cash up front and you got less cash up front because you got equity in his company, not equity, but stock in his company. So you banked on that being valuable in the future. What was the note component of that sale?
Yeah, so I took a smaller note than I should have. It's been a long time. I don't recall, but I want to say it was probably 20 or 30%. I took more stock than I probably should have. I was young. I could take the risk, but even then, that's not an excuse. It was just my lack of acumen, my lack of understanding of valuing a company. I didn't even understand. I took the stock. I didn't even understand how to value a company.
And the note was basically him paying you some remainder of the cash value over time?
Yeah, exactly. I think we did, I think it was like a few-year note. I think there was a short earn-out as well. It was a long time ago. It was decades ago. And,
sure.
And some stock.
Awesome.
And some cars, a couple of cars.
So, yeah, well, that's the other thing that I would encourage anybody to do when negotiating is throw random shit in the deal.
Yeah, totally.
It's amazing. It's amazing how often people are just like, yeah, fuck it, sure.
Or totally like, oh, you have some Bitcoin? Throw that in. Oh, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. What may have a lot of value for you may have less value or, intrinsic value to somebody. So.
Yeah, there's also one of the things that I've done on several real estate deals is asked for Clase Azul Ultra, which is like $2,000 a bottle. And in the scheme of, several $100,000 or $1 million deals, nobody fucking cares about $2,000. Yeah.
100%.
And so people kind of laugh it off. Yeah, for me, it's fun. And I don't actually want to spend $2,000 on a bottle of tequila.
Right. You wouldn't buy it for yourself, but as a gift, it's perfect.
I might, but I probably shouldn't.
Totally.
So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. That particular business I didn't even know about. Where does music production fit into this thing?
While I had that company, I had a dear friend of mine, Beej, who we're still friends decades later. Beej and I would go on the weekends up to LA. We were involved in the underground dance scene back then. It was the beginning of rave culture, pre-rave culture. And so we were involved in that. We would go to the parties. These were small fledgling little parties. There'd be 500 people out on a weekend, super underground, break-ins, warehouse parties. And Beej was DJing. He said, look, with my connections, Dav, and your business acumen and a few bucks, he said, I think we could take this to the next level. And I was like, I'm in. I was bored. We were still running the company, but but I was bored. And so B was breaking up with his girlfriend. He moved into my offices. We had a shower in the office, pretty big offices. And so I had about 12 kids that worked for me. At night, we began the planning of what we thought was going to be the biggest party in LA history. That was our goal. By, of course, some very, very smart planning and really some great, business strategy and some insane luck, a twist of fate that happened one evening. We became the biggest electronic music event producers in the U.S., not just LA, but the U.S. In overnight, in one evening, and that really changed the trajectory of our lives.
Well, okay, so a lot of festivals today are on the backbone of the music industry collapsing, meaning that you went from selling records and albums to selling singles. And so for artists to monetize today, there's a totally different music scene. But what you're talking about predates a lot of that, which is EDM, underground festivals, late at night, kind of ravey. So what was the general business model here? And what was who were the acts? How did you construct that from a financial perspective and promotion perspective?
So the model was, we charged $20. I think when I started, it was $15, and included unlimited alcohol, which was just beer.
Damn.
Because everyone was doing drugs.
Smart.
So everyone was doing drugs. So the alcohol component didn't matter. When I got married, I had 4,200 people at my wedding. I charged $20 for people to come. It was televised on MTV, but we were breaking into an abandoned, bakery building. When I say bakery, industrial bakery building, we were breaking into it. So was somebody else. We didn't know it. And so we outmaneuvered them and got them out, but they'd been marketing it for months and months and months that it was going to be there. So we got their people and our people in overnight, number one.
What was the hook, man? What was the CTA? Was it just big ass party late at night, or did you have a headlining DJ, or how did you get 15 to 20,000 people in a venue?
Excellent question. So this predated DJ culture. Okay. So essentially back then I had DJs. I paid them almost nothing. They came for the promoters. Okay. So what had happened was it was all underground. So the promoters were all hiding. They didn't want to put their name on anything. I came along and said, I'm going to legitimize this, and I'm going to put my name on the flyers, and I'm going to call myself Daven the Mad Hatter, and I'm going to wear this big hat. And I had a whole brand. When everybody else was hiding, I was like, no, here I am. So they knew if it was a Daven event, it was going to be great.
Because you were breaking into a fucking bakery?
Exactly. It was illegal to the point where eventually it was legal. But in that transition time, it was very risky. I got in trouble, as did others. Yeah, I got in trouble. So it was challenging. And so back then they came for the promoters. They looked for a quality event. So later what happened is I did that for years. And then as I began to segue out of the business, I still wanted to keep my fingers in it. So I was financing other promoters' events. And I had a partner, his name was Dave Dean, and he was doing events in San Francisco. And we did an event there. And he was the first guy that said, listen, we need to bring these DJs from the UK, because the UK was already starting to blow up. Rave culture caught on in Europe 15 years before it did in the US. And so you had celebrities beginning to take shape in the UK. So Dave was like, we need to bring over these DJs. I go, okay. These were DJs like Carl Cox, Paul Oakenfold. And he showed me the bill. He's like, we're going to have to pay him $10K. And when I saw $10K, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I was like, we're going to pay a DJ 10 grand. Today, DJ packages for festivals are, 6, 7, 8, 10 million, millions of dollars, anywhere from 1 to millions. I said, you're nuts. He's like, no, we have to do it. I'm like, okay. I mean, the idea, to me, it was preposterous, this idea of paying DJs exorbitant amounts of money. The idea of DJs being the star of the show. Obviously, DJ culture took root, and that's what we live in today. So I would have stayed in the business. I loved it so much, but here's what happened. And the rest of the world, it just began a steady ascent. In the US, it would go like this. It would begin to really take off, and then it would die. And then it would take back off, and it would die. And it kept hitting this ceiling for over a decade. I wasn't willing to wait it out. Plus, I didn't know that in a decade it would eventually take off. I might have never taken off in the US. So I boogied and I moved on to music. I wanted to be a rock star. And so I actually did my first album. I did a couple of albums, And it was cool because I could get distribution because I had a built-in audience. I could throw my own concert and fill it up, right? Nobody could do that, which was weird at first because I would have concerts packed with people not mouthing the words to my songs because they didn't know them yet. That's weird. It doesn't exist, right? You go to a concert, it's all your fans. They know the music, right? And then people started to ask me to write and produce. And I did that thinking I'd go back to being an artist, but that kind of took off. And then I had a record label with a young lady by the name of Layla Steinberg. Layla, and this was strategic because I wanted to get into pop and hip hop and I was doing electronic, but I really felt that I could shine in that space. And to me, it was more challenging than dance music. And so strategically, I had a record label with a young lady by the name of Layla Steinberg that was really tapped into the hip hop scene. And Layla discovered Tupac. And when that happened, that changed everything. That was great. I had a great run in music. I would still be there today, but that shift happened that you're talking about. 50 million people were downloading free music, Napster. And I saw the writing on the wall. I thought it was the end of the music business. And compared to what we were living in, it was the end of the music business because if you had a hit song, you put it on an album and you charge $18 for it, whether the rest of the album was good or not. Then it went to singles, it went to digital. Well, people were downloading for free. So I was like, well, how are we going to make money doing this? Somehow an innovative company got people to start paying for music again, which was Apple. I mean, boy, talk about innovation. To take somebody from free to pay. It's unbelievable. I could never have fathomed that could have happened. But today people pay $10 for all you can eat. So you're right. The money is no longer in the royalties anymore. Unless you're like Taylor Swift. But even then, if it was back in the day, Taylor Swift, she'd be making 20 times the money. So yes, now the model is merchandising, touring, and unless you're, in the top 1%, you're not making any money. EDM maybe takes you in the top 3%. But it's different now. The playing field has been leveled, right? Anybody could be the next Gangnam Style, right? Or the next whatever. And the platform exists and that's YouTube. It's there. You don't have to have distribution. But it's a whole different model now. So anyway, so I started producing. Napster came out. We had a project, the Tupac project, 2 weeks before Street Date. It came out on Napster. And all hell broke loose. I mean, we were all being threatened by the record label, lawsuit, and it was bad. And what had happened was we went to lunch and an intern downloaded the master on an ADAT and put it up on Napster. And when that happened, I was like, oh yeah, this is not good. And so I bounced and I was like, I don't know what to do. What am I going to do? But I knew how to produce. And it was the beginning of reality television. I was like, well, I can produce music. I wonder if I can produce television. So I hired a team. Gosh,
those 40, are not 50, the same.
Well, they're very similar, though. They are similar. They really are.
How are they similar?
Well, I'll explain. So as a producer, your responsibility. So if I worked with a band, my ultimate responsibility is to create a commercially, like an excellent commercially viable product and bring it in on time and on budget. That's the top high level view of what a producer does. Now, dropping into that, what did I do nuts and bolts? Well, I did one of a few things or all of the above. You want to write as much as possible for a couple of reasons. One is it's just super awesome and fun and creative, but also the money's in the royalties, right? You own the music, you have that money. So if it was an artist that, wasn't a musician, they weren't a lyricist, they were just maybe a great singer and they looked great, then I could write the music, I could write the words, and I was responsible for the finished product. Okay. If they were, let's say they're a rapper, okay, 99.999% of them, they write their own, rhymes, right? They write the rap. But most of them didn't do beats, didn't create their music. So I would write the music and I'd own 50% of the master or 50% of the royalties. Lastly, sometimes I would work with prodigies, just people that were unbelievably talented, which is great, but it makes my life and work way easier and less challenging. They were great already. I just had to make them greater. And I didn't do any of the writing and didn't participate in the royalties, just the production points. So to answer your question, If you look at it from a high level, that I'm just responsible for managing people, getting the best product, bringing it in time and in cost. Same thing in television production. It's the exact same thing. Okay. If we're talking about being a musician and stuff, yes, of course. If I'm writing the music, yeah, that's different than producing television. So reality TV, besides being just hot, everybody like, oh, you've trained dogs? Great. That would be a great show. Let's go. There were just so many things to produce, right? So many potential shows. And what reality television did was it brought down the cost of production tenfold. Now it's 100-fold, but it brought it down tenfold. You didn't have to have a soundstage. You didn't have to have gaffers, lighting people, huge budgets. I mean, the list goes on and on. Staff team. It just, everything was infinitely less expensive. Now I didn't know how to do it. So I hired a team, probably close to 100 people, both part-time and full-time. And unbeknownst to them, they all taught me how to produce television. So I hired the staff and they taught me. And that was a great education. I never really had any hits in television because I was only there for a few years when I started a sleepy little company called 123 Employee that now has thousands of employees all over the globe, which I'm sure we'll talk about too. But again, those tools, like, as you know, in my business, video, I made a major commitment to video before video was even hot, as you know. And now I have, millions of followers globally that watch my YouTube videos, and I've produced top-notch video for a decade. I mean, it's comparative. You look to my videos a decade ago, they look like shit compared to now. But for that time period, they were always top-notch. And my production value was off the charts because I came from a production background. So it served me very well. And might as well drop into the next thing. So
yeah. So why did you, like as a transition point here, we met probably in 2012, 2013. And you I think at an event, and you had started 123 Employee. What year did you start 123 Employee?
I think we started the early days of 123. I think it was 2009. Okay. Just after the meltdown.
So you started in 2009. Why did you pick? So first of all, huge departure from the creative background, right? You're in music, Hollywood, production, then reality TV, MTV. Now you're starting a fucking virtual assistant staffing company.
Yeah, like that's sexy and completely unrelated. Yeah.
Why like business at all relative to creation? And why specifically the VA market?
Yeah. So that whole thing ties together too. So what happened was, I had a friend, he had a music publishing deal in Asia, and he was buried in it. He was very busy, and he asked me if I would come in on it with him to help. And I did. And so that put me on that side of the world a lot. And then I started learning about, I'd see these contact centers like serving US customers. And I was like, well, let's just hire a small team to do some work in one of our businesses. I don't remember what the business was. Maybe it was some sort of sales business. And so we hired a team and started doing that. And, we muddled through it for quite some time, but then it became effective. And then we might have had maybe 20 agents or something like that. And one day I was like, why don't we look at offering this as a service? The big companies were already doing it. They were outsourcing to India, like American Express and what have you. But entrepreneurs were not at all, not one bit. And I was like, I think there's a need for this. Entrepreneurs are always trying to fill a need. Filling a need, you don't want to fill a need. People don't buy needs, they buy wants. You want to fill a want. Okay. So anyway, so I had this idea. We started doing it very early, bumpy road. Technology had not met the expectation yet. It was challenging. I didn't have a market because entrepreneurs needed outsourcing. They needed help in their business. They needed leverage. There's never been a time when entrepreneurs haven't needed help, right? You need a team. You need help. You need leverage. But they didn't want it because they didn't know it exists, because it really didn't exist yet. So we started this company and we were just too early to market. And everybody's always like, oh, you're first to market. Good for you. No. I always say you can always tell the pioneers because they're the ones with the arrows in their back. And that was us. So this was our experience. So we were just getting going. We were a U.S. company doing business in the Philippines, outsourcing U.S. jobs. Okay. So back then, outsourcing was a dirty word. Now it's a household term. There's nothing that's not normal about it. Back then, we had haters. We would get calls 3 times a day. fuck you, we're going to kill you. We're going to come burn your building down. Like really hairy shit. Okay. So that sucked. So early on, I realized that, hey, if we wanted to have a market, we'd have to carve one out for ourselves some way. And so we adopted an educational model, which is totally normal today, not normal at all back then, especially for an outsourcing company. And so I began writing books. My 10th book is in the bookstores now. I'm a New York Times best-selling author. We sold, millions of books. We started creating info products. I started speaking on stages. We started doing our events globally, Europe, Australia, US, New Zealand. And
so let me pause you there for a second, because today, anybody that's 25 to 35 right now or younger is hearing that and thinking, well, yeah, no shit. That's what you do. You create content and it drives people to business.
Yeah.
Anybody 35 and up remembers an era where this started, or maybe they're not aware now somehow.
Yeah.
But the notion of get attention and the rest will take care of itself is only very recently popularized. And at the time, investing a huge amount of time, energy, budget to just produce content was a risk and a huge gamble. What was the distribution of client acquisition for you at the time? We're talking 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13. How much of your energy went into content production versus some other client acquisition model?
Yeah, so I made a commitment to video back when there was no market for video. So I said, you know what, I'm pretty sure this video thing is going to be huge, right? And kind of like this internet. I heard this internet thing is going to be huge.
Right.
So I thought this video thing would be huge. And so I think
the Google acquisition of YouTube was in 2009, maybe.
Yeah. And so my commitment that I made was that I would take, I think, one day a month. So that was my original commitment. One day a month, and I shoot lots of videos, content videos. And we started aggregating them on YouTube and all the other channels. And so that was my commitment initially. But then, of course, there were the books, there were the info products, there were webinars, there were me speaking on stages and speaking on others, and having our own stages, our own events. And we began educating our prospects and turning them into clients, which is a methodology that we still use today. But in a minute, I'll share the big payoff of that. Okay. So then there were several tipping points in our business. One was adopting an educational model. Why? Well, first of all, it created a market for us. But the bigger distinction is back in the day that you're talking about, before the info marketing model, everybody marketing one-to-one. Everybody marketed one-to-one. You ran an ad of sorts, whether they're printed media, whatever it was, and that person called you or your sales team and you sold them. Okay. When we adopted this info marketing model, we went from marketing to one to marketing to many. If I wrote a book, 10,000 to 100,000 people might read that book. If I did a webinar, we'd have hundreds of people on that webinar. If I spoke on a stage, I'd have hundreds, if not thousands of people in the audience. If I did our own event, we'd have hundreds of people at our events. If I sold an info product, it'd be consumed by 100,000 people. And that, of course, blew out the business exponentially, because every time I opened my mouth, it was to many. So we would make many sales as opposed to one sale. We do a webinar and the shopping cart would go bing, 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 bing. You couldn't do that one-to-one. So that was a major tipping point in our business. Next tipping point was when Tim Ferriss's book came out, The 4-Hour Workweek. Because all of a sudden we went from being villainized to now we were the belle of the ball. Everybody wanted us on their stage. Everybody wanted to talk about it. Everyone wanted to do a webinar with us. It was the hot new thing. We weren't getting fuck you calls anymore. So we were able to go from defending ourselves to sharing the message and educating. So that was tipping point 1. Marketing to one, marketing to many. Tipping point 2, Tim Ferriss's book, 4-Hour Workweek. Tipping point 3, bringing on my first C-level, which was Bijal, as you know, the second beach in my life. Why? Because I think we were around employee 200 when B came on board. And I had a staff, I had a team, I had management, and I had a ton of ideas that I knew would move the needle in my business, but I didn't have the bandwidth to do them. I was like, if I could just have another one of me, this would be big. for my business. And
let me double click on that for a second, because you said you were at employee 200, but for a lot of people, if they're at employee 200, holy shit, they should have done this way earlier than that. But your specific type of business, you were at 200 employees. A lot of them were virtual assistants in the Philippines, right?
Yeah, they all worked out of our offices in the Philippines. But yeah, I wasn't making the money of a 200 person company in the US, right? So
right.
Yeah, I had to bite the bullet. There were times in the early days, lots of times, that I paid my C-suite more than I paid myself.
Do you know where you were in terms of revenue at that point when you brought on Bajal?
2.5, 3 mil.
Okay. Probably, see, that's super helpful, because, for a lot of people, that the head count is always a slippery metric, right? A lot of people, I know many entrepreneurs and many other business people are like, oh, how many people are in the company? And somehow it's a judgment or a reflection on the company, and frequently in the wrong way. Like, they think that more employees is better. Yeah. And my general sentiment is, if I could have no employees, that would be better.
Totally. And yeah, I mean, I see different models. So like, I know a lot of people that have tons of employees and their profit margin is minimal. And they don't make a lot of money, but they're hanging on for that major liquidity event, right? And which is totally understandable. And what may not be a super profitable high growth company for you could be very profitable for private equity or somebody who purchases it, right?
Well, of course, and it's very specific on the model. And of course, if your business is offering VAs, that's very headcount specific.
Totally.
So tell me about that part of it, because I want to dig into kind of your life today before we run out of time. But I do want to know, for, it's 2024. There are tons of people that should, obviously AI is all the rave, but there's a huge use case for outsource staff and how to get things done. What should you outsource to a VA, and what should you not outsource to a VA?
Sure. Now, one thing I will say, early in our evolution, we kept the VA business going because we were just so known for it. But then we moved into contact center businesses because we'd have much larger clients, doing customer service and stuff. It was much easier to manage. The virtual assistant model from a virtual assistant company, it's a terrible model. Why? It's for us. So
I remember you telling me this.
A terrible model. Like for you as a client, if you're going to hire a virtual assistant, great. If you're good at managing people and you have a good VA or a team of VAs, fantastic. But for us as a company, horrible model. Why? Because every client has a different set of SOPs. Every single one. There's no standardization, right? Most entrepreneurs or solopreneurs don't know how to manage people and employees. They're bad bosses. Hiring virtual assistants, hiring a team overseas, always a great thing to do for many businesses. You can definitely cut the cost down, which is great. And you can also have people working in different time zones, which is cool. There's all kinds of arbitrage that you can do. If you're going to outsource, you really have two options. You can hire a firm like 123 Employee. We do it all under our roof. Or you can hire freelancers. There are pros and cons to both. You'll pay less money to freelancers. Why? Because, we have to keep the lights on and stuff. So we charge a fee as well if you're going to use a center. I believe, and some people will dispute me on this, but I believe it's always better to go with a managed facility. Why? Redundant power, redundant phone, redundant management, accountability, buildings that can withstand earthquakes and hurricanes. All of this are common occurrence. Brownouts are common in the Philippines. You lose your power, you lose your phone because it's voice over IP. You lose your internet. You want to have roosters clucking on all your customer service calls? Hire a freelancer. Everybody in the Philippines has a rooster, as well as India or most of the other places you're going to outsource to. Also, if you want to scale, you can scale a virtual team working out of their houses, but it's tough. Whereas if they're all under one roof, you have management that can do that for you. The idea is hire once and then have that person scale your team for you. So I believe in using a managed facility. What should you outsource? If you ask all the gurus, they'll say, outsource your busy stuff. I call that BS, busy stuff. Okay. They'll all say, there's only one you in the business. Outsource all the busy stuff so you can focus on, the most important things in your business. I disagree. So there's always, 1,000 tasks you can do every day in your business, right? But only a small handful that create bottom line results that you can see tangible impact on your revenue. I call those IGAs, income generating activities. Outsource those. Outsource all the IGAs you can effectively. Why? Because if you're starting to hire a virtual team, you may have a small business and it's always bottom line, right? You're always keeping an eye on your bottom line. You're not made of money. So outsource the things that are going to make you more money so then you don't feel it. So do that, get all that stuff dialed in, and then go back and look at all of the minutia that's on your plate that could be outsourced or delegated to somebody else, and then attack that. So that's my suggestion.
Outsource income generating activities, then outsource the BS, the busy stuff.
Also, we're now part of a big company, and one of the reasons why is I saw the writing on the wall. A lot of this is going to get outsourced to AI for sure. It's already happening. Customer service will evaporate. I mean, it'll go from 100% to 8%. Virtual assistant services, a little more specialized, requires, kind of that human element. So, VAs are going to be around, but you'll have one person to do the task of 10. This is a classic example as just as technology ate the paging business, technology will absolutely eat customer service and eat into virtual assistant tasks. For the most part, almost no jobs or businesses are safe from AI. AI will replace almost everything. And my top line theory for anybody that gives a shit, which is probably nobody, I believe that AI will solve all the problems of the world, food, cancer, etc., and then annihilate all of us. And I give it and I give it 10 years. I give it 10 years.
So
and if you want to know why, I'll just give you the quickie. First of all, of course we know that AI can fix everything. But we also know that so much of AI is open source and so many people want to kill us, kill everybody. And so, the things are going to happen. And then who knows? The AI just may figure out, hey, it makes more sense to not have actual human beings. We don't need those and they'll just kill us. Now, most people think it'd take 20, 30 years, but how rapidly things move and that grows exponentially on top of itself. And so you look at how quickly things are moving in this moment. I give it 10 years.
So you have a bag of cash and guns that you're going to run with when that time comes?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. The cool thing is I'm involved in a couple of things today. Today I have my fingers in a lot of things, and I'm involved in some things that actually I can't be replaced in, which I think is really cool. I've spent a lot of deep thought. Could I be replaced here? Could I be replaced here? No. So that's kind of neat.
Like what?
So I'll give you an example. So this segues into where I am today, right? So as you know, about 6 years ago, I moved to Puerto Rico, made Puerto Rico my home. And I'm not an accountant, nor do I profess to play one on television. But if you are a U.S. resident, you jump through the legal hoops, you make Puerto Rico your home, your tax home, and do what you have to do. For those people that do that, they receive 0% capital gains on their investments, for the most part, 0% dividends, 4% federal income tax on their business. As you can imagine, this is a huge game changer, and it attracts a really interesting mix of people. Now, having said that, there are almost 3 million people, something like 2.8 million in Puerto Rico. There's only about 5,000 of us of what they call Act 2022 or Act 60 that take advantage of this. So it's not a lot of people know about it, but anyways, it's been a big game changer and it's really cool. So I moved to Puerto Rico for tax reasons. But
okay, so I want you to tell me the rest of this, but real quick for those that don't know, you mentioned these things and we'll link to them in the show notes, but Act 20 and Act 22 were two separate acts. One was a 4% corporate tax rate. That was Act 20. Act 22 was the zero tax and dividends and capital gains. Those got rolled into Act 60 eventually. And you said there are 5,000. We do credit card processing, Easy Pay Direct does in Puerto Rico. So we work with the banks there. And the bankers refer to you all as the 4%ers.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
huge tax advantage.
I hear the 4%ers, the 1%ers. Yeah, exactly. And, it's been great. What's been an even bigger benefit is, as you can imagine, it attracts some pretty happening people. And, when I moved to Puerto Rico, I might have known a couple of billionaires. If you asked them if they knew me, they probably wouldn't remember. Today I've got 20 on speed dial. We go jet skiing together. It's neat, and it changes the way you think of things. I think of business totally different today. The deal flow is pretty awesome. And on top of that, the indigenous Puerto Rico people who have grown up in Puerto Rico, are some of the loveliest people on the planet. So it's really, really neat. So to answer your question, the one thing that I do that can't be replaced by AI. So when I came here, I have really become a big advocate for Puerto Rico. As you know, I love to build communities. I have a couple million people that kind of follow me and consume my stuff. And here in Puerto Rico, I started a little group. I started a little cigar club 6 years ago when I first moved here after Hurricane Maria. We used to get 6 people that would show up to these parties at my house, because nobody was on the island after Maria. But then, over time, I stripped out the cigar thing, just made it kind of a social club with the idea to bring Puerto Ricans, people who grew up in Puerto Rico, together with people like me, I call me New-Ricans, right? To bring us together, for food, for conversation, for dialogue. Because from there, anything is possible. If I say, Brad, let's go grab a cocktail, or Brad, let's go grab a bite to eat, you're not going to say, I don't drink, I don't eat. You're going to go. And from there, as you know, all of our biggest deals have been from when we hang out. We're doing things. You and I have had some amazing experiences together. We've traveled together. I created this to bring everyone together. When I first started, this group was 95% guys like me. Okay. But my goal was I wanted to bring us all together. Fast forward 6 years later, we have over 1,700 people in the San Juan Social Club. And it's closing in on 50-50. We're at 60-40, 60% guys like me, 40% Puerto Ricans. And I do events once a month on the island, curated events at different locations, just once a month. They're free. I do them as a public service just to bring people together. And it's been really, really great. It's super fun. I just love doing it. No AI is going to replace me there. It'll help me, but it won't replace me. Okay. And then I announced last year, hey, we're going to do our first cruise. So this year we had the first San Juan Social Club cruise, and we had 238 people, amazing founders on the cruise. Yep. It was great. It was on Virgin. And more than that, our cruisers had a blast, but they did $110 million in deals between each other in a week. And how did that happen? I'll tell you what the secret sauce was. 75% of the people were people from Puerto Rico, amazing founders, executives, entrepreneurs. The other 25% were all my incredible friends that I've met over the last decade from speaking in 51 countries, guys exactly like you, Brad, a lot of people that you know. Okay. So it was the cross-pollination that created this amazing result. What happened was our people like you from all over the world saw what people in Puerto Rico were doing. They got fired up. Our people in Puerto Rico saw what our people from all over the globe were doing, and they loved it. And boom, they started doing business and having a blast. So here we are, a year away from next year's cruise. We set sail March 15th of 2025. We already have 400 people booked for next year. If I'm hanging out with a local Puerto Rican, they don't have access to the benefits I have. They have some. So they can get 4% for their export business. My 4%, by the way, is only for export. So any businesses I start on the island, I pay regular tax. But anything I do outside, I pay 4% federal income tax. If you're Puerto Rican and you're born here and what have you, you can do that. And unfortunately, Puerto Rico has not done a great job of marketing that. So there's some Puerto Ricans that don't think they have access to it. And as a result, there's some resentment. They don't have access to the investor credits or the dividend credits. Actually, dividend credits, I'm not sure. Maybe they do. So if you're a hardworking Puerto Rican and you're paying a lot of taxes, there's no way I can convince you that it's fair that the rich guys are not, right? That's because it's not fair. Okay.
No, sure.
But I can show you that it's working. And by the way, some of those benefits are available to them. Not all of them know that. And there's a lot of talk about making it just available to the Puerto Ricans. They absolutely should. I think they should. Not everybody does what I do, but guys like me come over and start organizations to bring people together and give a lot of money to charity, and we make a difference. So my charity, my big one is Vimenti Boys and Girls Club. It's a school here born out of the Boys and Girls Club. Last year, we gave the families of Vimenti, 238 families, I think, we gave them Christmas. They couldn't afford Christmas. And we bought we did a toy drive, thousands of toys for the kids of Vimenti. So, so we're making a difference here for sure. I think, some people who don't understand, think that we're not, but, I see it and we are. And a lot of people think so. And so for me, bringing people together, it allows people to, connect and realize that people are people and collaborate and do good things. So it's something that I love doing and makes me feel really good and it helps a lot of people. A lot of people are really into it. And I'll tell you, this is kind of cool real quick. I was at the gym the other day and this young kid came up to me. His name was Jonathan. I think he was like 25. He just got out of the forces, Air Force or Marines or something like that. And he came up and he goes, "Are you Daven Michaels?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I think it's really awesome what you're doing." He's a Puerto Rican. He goes, "I think it's really awesome what you're doing to bring Puerto Ricans together with transplants." He goes, "I think that's so great." And I was like, boy, he made my day. I was so psyched and really psyched because you don't know really how you're being perceived, right? That was my goal, to bring everyone together, to bridge the divide, to get rid of tensions and get everybody really to love each other. But you don't know if that's translating. You don't know if people get it. And that kid got it. He totally got it. He's like, "I love what you're doing." Da, da, da. I was like, wow, okay, wow, this is great. So people are getting it. And I get a lot of compliments, but it's really cool. It's really cool.
That's dope, man. Well, I'm a relationships first kind of person for sure.
You are. Always have been.
Well, Daven, you've had a wild ride, and I'm looking forward to getting out there to enjoy said cocktail.
Come on the cruise, my man. You
have
to come on the cruise.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. It's we're long past due, but it's great to get a little time to catch up and have our pseudo FaceTime right now.
Great seeing you.
You too, man. Where do you want to point people outside of the Puerto Rican Social Club or just that? Where do you want to direct people?
Sure. So if you want to check out you can check out the club, but if you're not in Puerto Rico, there's really no point. But if you want to check out the cruise, it's sanjuansocialcruise.com, sanjuansocialcruise.com. If you want to learn more about me, I'm Daven Michaels on everything. DavenMichaels. So I spell it a little differently. So if you go to davenmichaels.com or Instagram, Daven Michaels. Or
whatever. Love it. Daven, until next time, man.
Great seeing you, my friend. Always a pleasure.